Hi everyone, welcome to the second Chess Boot Camp Battle Arena. So this is a different time. This is an earlier time. Previously, on the last one, I had Christina Tigers Without Stripes commentating with me. This one is earlier in the day, so it's gonna be like 5:30 in the morning Eastern time. So I've been joined by my buddy Craig, who is a 2000 rated rapid player. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, thanks for the introduction.
Yeah. So you might, if you've been following the channel for a while, you might remember that Craig and I did it was kind of a group fight against a bot, wasn't it? And we had a FIDE master on there, and Craig and James from Chess Goals and a couple of others as well were on that call. But this is this is just a battle between all of the Chess Bootcamp Club members. So I've gone into one game here, and the reason is because it's Muggleborn Prince who requested this particular time slot for the next arena. So that's what we've got. So interesting opening, Craig. Let me take you through this so far. So this is a Chigorin, which is interesting. So it's kind of like the mirror image of a normal king's pawn opening, but on the queen's pawn.
Yeah.
And obviously we've got it 6-3-2 against a 1400. And here, I would be tempted to capture with a G pawn to support E4 later on, even though it isolates that pawn. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think G takes is quite thematic in this opening. Also sort of creates a future for the rook sliding over to G1 and potentially eyeing up a kingside attack if they do castle that way.
Yeah. So the weakness of having the 3 pawn islands and the isolated pawn is kind of offset by the semi-open file, which I didn't think about that. But I do like, in general, capturing towards the center too, because if you get to capture again, it gives you that spare pawn, doesn't it?
Correct, yeah, perfect, yeah.
Now white here captures with the E pawn. Then black develops, queen develops. I'm guessing that white's intention here is to castle long. Queen out, knight hits queen. The queen's got no future actually on this diagonal. So the queen's going to have to come back to one of these squares where it still defends the pawn. Comes back there. Bishop out. This is nice play, actually.
Yeah. Nice
aggressive play from Botboy, who I did give Botboy a very hard time in the previous arena for a extremely dubious opening. Okay, and now the rooks come across. Okay, so now if black is going to castle, he's going to have to go short. Oh, yeah. The computer doesn't like that, but also neither do I, because it invites.
Yeah.
Discovered attack against the queen with E5 should win material. And Muggleborn Prince spots it. Oh, now the eval bar's gone balanced again. Why could that be? Was that not the right move?
Oh yeah, so queen E3 would pin the pawn. So that might be what the engine's sort of saying.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he only finds it.
Only move, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So what obviously it hates this for white. So what was a better move?
Yeah, because it's interesting because I don't detect it being like -5 as much as that. It's quite a big thing. So there may well be a tactic worth exploring afterwards, but I don't see something that's that detrimental to the position.
No. Curious one. So it doesn't like that. We find this, hits the knight retreats, and we are in a fairly equal position according to the engine. Okay, we'll get up to date now. So black plays bishop to e7, allowing the king to castle,
Mm-hmm.
takes, which it didn't like very much.
Yeah, I guess it allows this fort coming up, which isn't necessarily the end of the world. As long as the queen moves, we're still threatening to take their knight on f6 if they take ours. So it looks like it will still be 1-for-1 at the end of this sequence.
But the queen's got a few options.
Yeah.
If pawn takes knight, pawn takes knight.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. So let's see what Bot Boy chooses to do. Also notice that Bot Boy has spent more time thinking.
Mm-hmm, that's good. Always good when you're playing rapid games.
Oh.
Okay, this is a mistake because after the pawn captures the knight, it's hitting the queen immediately.
Yeah.
So that's, unfortunately, we're not able to capture their knight in reply.
So any of these would have been all right.
Correct.
This
I
one
think
was
so.
the trap.
Yeah, because the pawn captures with a tempo on the queen.
There we go.
After queen takes queen, the knight can recapture the queen, so the knight gets to escape that attack as well. There's kind of no tricks. Yeah, something like that, and would escape the danger.
Now queen takes queen, bishop takes, and again the knight can escape.
Yeah.
This is forced.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be in a position where white has a very fragmented pawn structure and has the bishop pair, but black has one bishop and two knights.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to fancy black.
Yeah, black's definitely better here with essentially being up a piece.
It's not forced. It's got bishop takes.
Yeah. Probably king takes, maybe just because you also drop the pawn on e5 if you recapture with the bishop, potentially. So keeping that bishop there at least holds on to the... Yeah.
And also, now the queens have been swapped off, getting your king into the corner is a lot less of an issue, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay, so Prince is now hitting the bishop, wants to eliminate the bishop pair, wants to trade off material. That's not good.
Yeah, that invites tripled pawns.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah. So maybe sliding the bishop back to h2 would have been the safest move. But yeah, now the pawn structure's extremely compromised.
Yeah, and this bishop's pinned as well.
Yeah.
So how's your chess been going in the last 6 months or so since we last did this?
Yeah, it's been going okay. I've mostly been focusing on Blitz personally, although I am planning to revisit Rapid now. I've mostly just been working on, like, I prefer like speed chess and playing like maybe some objectively kind of like dubious stuff. Kind of big fan of Eric Rosen, so a lot of the sort of gambits and sort of tricky play, and that's really helped my game in Blitz. But of course, in Blitz, it's those openings work because it creates a lot of complication in the position. But yeah, it's been good. It's been fun, which is I guess is the most important thing.
Well, it is a game after all, isn't it? A lot of people take it very seriously, but ultimately it's a game. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, it's been fun. How's your chess been going since we last?
Well, yeah, not bad. I mean, I've fairly solidly got myself over 1500.
Excellent.
So I'm climbing up there. Yeah, James from Chess Goals, last time I looked, he was like mid 1600, so he's doing great as well.
Yeah, he's improving really well. I think he may have hit 1700 at some point. He may still be there. But yeah, it's great progress from him as well, considering the amount of time that's passed.
Yeah, and yeah, he's really studying. Studying is just working at it, which is great. Yeah, Christina had a real roller coaster. She dropped down to like 1200 at one point and is now knocking on the door of 1500 also. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, and those sort of rating swings are quite common, especially when you reach new highs and the opponents you're paired up against, even if they look like a similar rating, they may well be more established at that rating. So it's quite natural to take a bit of a slump when you reach new peak ratings. But yeah, hopefully with some experience that will stay.
Yeah. Now it looks like here that black's hung a pawn, but the bishop is actually pinned by this rook. So
Exactly. Yes.
I don't like this pin. I would want to get my king out of that pin.
Agreed. Yeah, king e2, king e3, something like that.
Yeah, and probably leave the king on a, a light square to avoid the attentions of that bishop.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm interested in your blitz repertoire because I'm similar. I've now kind of pretty much come out as a Gambit player. You know, this is what I like. You know, so I don't know if you've been keeping up with any of my material, but I've been playing the Vienna now for
so some of that stuff.
Months. Really enjoying it. I'm not getting bored of it anytime soon.
Excellent.
So that's my e4 e5 thing. Yeah, we dropped a pawn there, but these pawns are going to be really, really hard to defend anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm now venturing into the Budapest Gambit against d4 as black. So yeah, my white repertoire right now against the Sicilian, there's so many options, you know. I recently actually picked up Levi Rosman's E4 course, and he's recommending. Well, he's got two options against the Sicilian. He's got an A3 line and a B3 line. B3 line, I think, is the Alapin, isn't it? Is it?
I think that's C3 followed by D4.
Yeah, with D4 maybe. But the B3 one is interesting. But yeah, I've played all sorts against the Sicilian. I spent a while with the Grand Prix. Tried the what's the Gambit? The D4 Gambit.
Smith-Morra.
Smith-Morra Gambit, yeah. So what's your blitz choice against Sicilian these days?
So for the Sicilian, I actually don't play a Gambit, just because I haven't really. I spent most of my time learning the Najdorf, the Bishop G5 line of the Najdorf from both sides. So whenever I'm playing the Sicilian, I'll play one of those that response just because I know it well. Typical plan in that opening is just queenside castles and doing the pawn storm on the king side, depending on where they castle. And it's similar to a Gambit in terms of it's still a very sharp opening, fast development, and very, very rarely are the games sort of dry. I mean, mostly at our level, there's not too many lots of drawing positions anyway. But yeah, it's quite a good opening from that perspective.
Right. Yeah. So are you an E4 player with white?
E4 exclusively, yeah. I did initially start out with D4, but I quickly changed to E4. I feel like E4 is actually, I would recommend E4 for a lot of beginners because it just gets you a lot of experience with those tactical games and sharp positions, and often I find D4, whilst is very solid, can be not. I don't think you get as many attacks as you would, so you get more experience, I feel, in a shorter amount of time playing E4. So yeah, E4 is my sort of main choice.
Yeah. So with E4, E5, how do you go?
So my personal opening with white, generally, if they play E5, I will try and go for the Roy Lopez. I go for the exchange variation of the Roy Lopez, so it's nowhere near as theoretical as the main line, because the main line's been pretty much overanalyzed. So anyone that plays E5 will know what to do against the Roy Lopez. But I exchange, so I will play, when I pin the knight on B5, and if they challenge that pawn, I will capture the knight and double up the pawns and sort of take it from there. There's quite a lot of tactical traps in the middle game from that position. And also that the end game is usually better for white just because the pawn structure is damaged. And if you practice your end games, you can usually have quite a comfortable game. So I score pretty well with that. And it's also the opening I chose around about 900, maybe 1000, and I've stuck with that over 2000 exclusively almost. And I have dabbled with a couple of things just to try out, but it's definitely an opening that once you pick it, you can definitely stay with it. It doesn't sort of lose its, you're not playing for tricks, so it doesn't sort of fall short on a stronger audience eventually. Pretty good.
So that's really interesting. For anyone who's okay, so discovered check here by
Discovered check.
Prince. Yeah, which is going to lose this pawn.
Yep.
So for anyone who's learning, who's like sub 1000 now, you're saying that there's absolutely no reason why you can't pick a solid repertoire now, and it could carry all the way to 2000 and, potentially titled.
I mean, definitely. I mean, the Royal Lopez is played at all sorts of levels. The exchange variation was popular back in the day. It's less popular now at the top level. And it's really just because at the top level, it's a bit drawish. But again, like realistically, if you're below like master level, a lot of those like theoretically drawn positions, they usually will swindle one way or another anyway, based on end game play or something else. So it's still definitely a valid opening to try. Yeah, bishop d3, I do kind of like that because it protects the c3 pawn. So maybe place.
Nice move.
Yeah. So okay, so king e8, I guess getting out of future pins on the b5. If the bishop went to b5, it would have pinned that knight, and it would have been hard to protect that knight. So I guess he's coming up early. Although I guess castling probably would have done something similar. Okay, excellent.
So do you have ambitions of becoming a chess master yourself?
Certainly ambitions of getting to that type of strength. In terms of actually officially going for it, like I like online chess, and I kind of just play it for that sort of for my own enjoyment, coming back to what you said originally. So I'm just not too sure if I'll want to go down the whole route of like OTB tournaments and all that sort of like that longer process. I may well do, but right now I've never played in a club. I've never played like a proper OTB sort of other than casual games against friends. So time will tell, but certainly it's not high up there in my ambitions to take it seriously at least. What about yourself? Do you sort of have the ambitions of going down the OTB route or more recreational?
I'd be really curious to play over the board. Just because I've never, basically I learned to play when I was a kid. My mum, sat me in bed and learned to play with a folding board.
Yeah.
And I played a handful of games through school, but I haven't properly played over the board in 35 years or something like that. So yeah, I'd be really interested to know what it's like, but in terms of how far to take it, I don't know. I just want to be the best player I can be. I don't know what I'm capable of,
Yeah.
And I'm old, I turn 50 next year, so it gets harder to study.
Yeah. Yeah, and finding that time.
Yeah, so I mean, here I'd be inclined maybe just to line the rook up with the king here, because then if king takes the pawn, the bishop's pinned.
Is this the most recent position? It looks like there may be one more.
No, it is. Yeah. We're up to date.
Okay.
Only 2.5 minutes now for Bot Boy.
Yeah.
The rook would love to take that, but
yeah, the bishop was dislodged. Yeah.
Still be tempted to play this, and then if bishop takes there, no, bishop can't take there because the rook's defended. Yeah. So the king can get out of the pin now if it wants.
Yeah.
Give some options. This is all unrated stuff. But White's immediate problem is what to do with the rook. Unless I've disconnected. Let me refresh the page and see what's happening. Oh, yes, we have missed some action. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I did have a message saying it had disconnected.
Fair, yeah.
Okay, king takes pawn. Now, oh no, because rook's defending. That's nice. Nice move. Looks like he's going to double up now.
Yep.
And then this pawn is effectively hanging because if rook takes, and the bishop can't recapture because it would.
Yeah, the second rook comes to d8. Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, that's never. Yeah, walking into a potential discovered attack here with the rook moving. So even rook takes c4 technically, would be an attack on the a4 rook because the knight still protects c4.
Yes.
And the bishop can't capture the rook because it's a simultaneous check. So I think that's the
kind of winning.
Game winning, yep.
And now that rook is free.
Correct, yeah. So it's quite difficult to come back from.
Absolutely.
Easy thing to miss, but I guess the sort of advice there is don't ever step onto a square that has that opposing piece targeting it even through X-ray because of these discovered attacks. Yep.
Absolutely. Of course, we saw the Roy Lopez quite a few times at the World Championship as well.
Yep.
It's not the most entertaining sporting event of the year, but
certainly not the first half. But yeah, I think that's just the unfortunate reality of these high-level games. Both players are so good that they can quite often get drawish positions, basically. But yeah, unfortunately for Neepel, it kind of fell apart in the second half.
Mm. Yeah, totally. Okay. Black here is now in a very dominant position.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to.
I think this rook's going to come across at some point, and maybe knight here.
Yeah.
Check, pinning the bishop.
So the king probably wants to move to e1 just to at least. I mean, I know the position's quite far gone, but at least just to hang on to the e2 pawn, or sorry, the f2 pawn.
So do you study chess in any way at the moment?
I sort of do keep up to date with a lot of exercises effectively. So tactics is sort of like an essential one pretty much at any level.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent quite a considerable amount of time on endgames.
Puzzles?
Sorry?
Do you do puzzles for your tactics?
Puzzles for the most part, yeah. A mixture of just the rated time puzzles on chess.com and some Puzzle Rush as well. I think Puzzle Rush can be quite decent just for pattern recognition. It doesn't give you enough time to calculate, but it exposes you to a lot of like simple positions over and over again. So it can have its benefit there. Yeah, I think your sort of forecast here for the rook coming out and delivering mate is on the cards. Yeah, okay, so unfortunately, yeah, the game is over. So yeah, a mixture of tactics training, and I've spent some time on endgames. I think endgames is a massive area for a lot of improving players to focus on, especially rook endings and king and pawn endings. Those two make up the vast majority of all endgames. So if you have limited time to invest, it should be in those two areas. I would say, that's certainly helped me quite a lot. And then just some opening work, but even then, it's really just very minor, subtle stuff. It's not anything theoretical or deep, just enough to learn some of those trickier gambits that I've been practicing. Really, so not too much theory there. What about yourself? How's your studying going? Do you have a sort of routine as such?
I'm honestly not the best student. I mean, I know I need to do more puzzles. I know I need to exercise my chess brain in ways other than playing, because when you just play, you're practicing playing at your ability. You need to try, you need to expose yourself to things that stretch you beyond what you're familiar with and what your normal patterns and thought processes are. So
yeah, exactly.
So this is a interesting situation. We've got a 4-1-6 Bella Flame against Your King is Hanging, rated 780. And okay, so let's go. Okay, so French knight. Okay, so White's developing well, but is neglecting the pawn structure. Black has a classic French pawn structure. I'd be very tempted to push e5 though. But then leaves that pawn a bit up. I don't know. Okay, develop. Now, there's a general principle not to move developed pieces a second time.
Yeah.
So I think maybe just finishing development by putting the queen here might have made some sense as well.
And I wonder if sort of like, because again, coming back to the principles, usually developing your bishop to d3 whilst your pawn is still in d2 is it can be a bit sort of cramping of your position. So maybe they realised their mistake trying to move the bishop away. But yeah, generally you want to avoid putting a piece on top of a pawn blocking its development, especially the central pawns.
Yeah. And I like a lot of positions as well when you like put the knight behind the f pawn if you can get pawn to f4. So you get obviously that a lot with the Vienna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the king's gambit and those sort of positions.
Okay, it's nice to see they're taking their time over these moves. Now a trade here wouldn't really favour black very much, I don't think.
Yeah, it'd be quite hard for black to hold on to the d pawn after c takes the knight. So after knight takes knight and the c pawn recaptures that knight, after like knight e2, you've got the bishop and the knight both attacking that pawn, potentially.
Yes.
Maybe you could throw in e5 first to stop the e pawn coming down to protect. Because I'm just seeing after knight takes knight and knight e2, they could play e5 to protect that pawn, but alas, that line never went ahead. Okay,
has now played the knight into here, which does block off the.
It does, yeah. So I guess maybe we're okay.
Oh, hang on! Doesn't that just drop the knight?
Looks like it. Oh, but the bishop's hanging on b5, so it's a 1-for-1 technically.
All right. And now, right. So white declines the trade of queens. And goes after this knight.
Goes after the knight, yeah.
It's nice to have these guys in the center, though. Although one's undefended. No, it's not. It's defended by the bishop. That's not bad. The computer really fancies black here. Nearly three in front, but I don't know. It looks very playable to me. Get rook d1 by the open file.
So I like white's bishop on b2. There could be future mating attacks on the king potentially at some point. So yeah, I think this position's pretty okay.
Yeah, even like here with a lot of pressure on.
Exactly, yeah.
Would you consider an f pawn break here?
Potentially, yeah. Sometimes that.
Okay, so we have knight in, attacking the queen. Okay, now the queen's attacking this knight.
So I think your f4 move could come in handy here, potentially. Or moving the knight. Yeah, moving the knight is completely valid as well.
Okay, now we're up to date on this one. So I've seen quite a few of your king is hanging hangings games, and sometimes he seems to play like a 1200, and I don't know why he's sub 800. That's the thing with so many players. It's just blunderwatch, isn't it? Really, it's these one move face slappers where you go, oh no. So how do you avoid that? I mean, do you remember playing a load of blunders?
Yeah, definitely. And it's sometimes, I mean, it could be some interesting sort of content for yourself, but I know, like, personally, I went over just more for recreational purposes more than anything else. But going back to my very first games on chess.com, I did this recently back when I was like 600, and it's just crazy how much you forget, like, how you used to play. So yeah, I definitely do remember that time when I was hanging a lot of pieces, and sometimes it still happens in Blitz. But I think, again, just coming back to tactics gives you that sort of practice of spotting hanging pieces or capturing hanging pieces. I also, when I seen one of your videos, I think it was aimed at like the complete beginner, this goldfish method of like just paying attention to the last move your opponent played. Focusing on that can also help sort of any sort of like what's that attacking.
Yeah.
Interesting method.
I think we need to have a kind of a conscious. There's this thing they talk about like learning to drive.
Mm-hmm.
They say that you start being unconsciously unskilled. It's like you don't know how to do it, but you don't even know that you don't know. And then you become consciously unskilled, where you're still bad, but you're thinking about it. And then you become consciously skilled. So that is that if you really think, you can do it, right? And then later on, the conscious, deliberate, like, say in chess, you're talking about not hanging pieces. It becomes more automatic.
Yeah.
Your eyes just check, and your brain does it without you having to think about doing it.
Exactly.
And then it becomes layering up those tactics, those patterns, and being able to see them. So when I watch videos by IMs or GMs, they spot patterns so much quicker than I can do it.
Yeah.
This knight's moved a couple of times recently. Here, I thought c4 just looks very natural to kick the queen, but the computer really hates white's position now. It looks perfectly playable to me. Okay, so where can the queen go? No. Retreat. All of these.
Yeah. Queen c6 I quite like as well. Just keeping the queen on that diagonal. Yeah, exactly. So to support a bishop b7 and lining up an eventual battery on the g2 square.
This knight is defending g2 currently.
Yeah, for the moment. Maybe we could have a plan to dislodge that knight at some point.
Okay. So black has anticipated you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so bishop b7, connecting the rooks and also setting up that really strong attack at some point could be useful.
You think maybe
something like that, just as brutal as that, just trying to kick those knights away could set that attack up.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it, how often the right thing is just blunt.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got two pieces lined up on a file, add a third.
Yeah.
And then you can just blast your way through.
Yeah.
And chess is often not that sophisticated. It can be, like you say, brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's the way I like to play. So hopefully we see some fireworks coming soon.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the repertoire discussion. What do you play? So your e4, your Sicilian. Okay. Obviously there's a lot of funny sidelines. So against e4, you're a Sicilian.
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I was exclusively a Sicilian player right up until about 1750-ish, at which point I switched to the Gambits. And I actually think that's helped me quite a lot in Blitz, just moving through that sort of intermediate rating range. So I will play the Petrov now. But specifically, I'm trying to go for those types of Stafford Gambit positions. I know you've done some content on the Stafford last year. And I just find that's it catches so many people out, even at the higher level. And although it can be quite tough to play if your opponent's well prepared, just the risk to reward ratio, I find like maybe only 1 in 4, 1 in 5 is prepped against it. So you still get quick wins like 70% of the time. And I was also fortunate enough to have Eric Rosen actually gave me an hour and a half lesson on the Stafford Gambit.
Wow.
So he showed me some sort of more sidelines, basically, just to keep the fire with that Gambit. If they quote unquote know the refutation, there's some more stuff to it. So yeah, it's really it's really fun to play, I feel, when you get those sort of quick wins. So the Stafford for the most part, but if I'm playing a match with someone multiple games in a row and I know that they can refute the Stafford, then I'll just change the Sicilian and take every game in that line thereafter. And again, in terms of specific lines in the Sicilian, the only one I've really looked at is the Najdorf. I think I made the mistake early on of just picking what the sort of most famous opening is and trying to study that. And I remember going through like the 11, 12, 1300s, getting just crushed playing it because I just didn't understand it. But eventually I sort of am a bit more comfortable in it now. But yeah, so that's pretty much, if the Stafford Gambit will work, I'll go for that. If not, then Sicilian is basically my sort of default.
Okay, I think White has missed a big. Oh no, hang on, hasn't.
As long as
that was the risk on the previous move. Risk is knight here with check and a discovery against the queen.
Correct.
But with knight, this move, because White played that pretty quickly in less than 9 seconds.
Yeah. So
this isn't possible. This queen takes.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't convinced with h3. Didn't really see the.
Yeah, so bishop b7 I like because it's now double attacking the knight, and if the knight moves, it's mate. So they probably have to play f3 here, awkward looking move, just to guard that knight. But then your move, this sort of f5, comes thereafter.
Yeah.
But at least when the knight moves at that point, the f3 pawn blunts out the queen's attack. So I guess slightly compromised structure, but it will hold, I think, for the time being. But yeah, the engine's really not liking White's position, even though they're only down 1 pawn, I think, because of this attack.
Yeah. That drops the knight, surely. Because knight's now double attacked and only defended once.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's just a free knight, unfortunately, for White.
I'd be tempted to throw this in as well. The players are taking their time because we've still got this sniper bishop lurking there.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
And that ends this night.
Always that puncher's chance when you still have a queen on the board, and particularly that well-placed bishop eventually, we could still swindle an unexpected checkmate.
So what's your spicy approach to facing d4 as black then?
The d4 I play particularly dubious. I actually go for the England Gambit for the most part, and that's not an opening I would recommend for beginners because there is actually almost a clear refutation to it. But again, in Blitz, you can kind of get away with playing in this kind of way when there's not a lot of time to think for your opponent to think how to punish it. And there's so many traps in the England that, again, it's like one of those weighing up risks to reward that you can still sometimes get away with it. If I was playing a serious game, the Nimzo Indians is like the only opening I've looked at properly. Although I've recently been looking at the Grunfeld defense, but that's also, I find even for me, quite difficult to really put into practice, but it's something I'm currently trying in terms of taking my openings a bit more seriously. What about yourself?
Yeah, well, like I say, I've been playing knight f6 and Budapest. Or there's also this Fiarovitz Gambit as well.
Yeah, you recommended that on the forums, I believe.
Yeah. I had a lesson yesterday with a guy in the Philippines who's like 2200 rated, and he said he prefers the Budapest Gambit to the Fiarovitz. So the Budapest is you play a knight out and then knight g4. The Fiarovitz Gambit is knight to e4. And okay, there we go.
Unfortunate.
Queen abandoned the defense of that. Well played. Well played. Your king is hanging. Unlucky Bella Flame, but hung on in really well there, I think, for a 400.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And again, like coming back to that position, even though the engine didn't like it, I actually felt that we could probably do something with that. So I think she played pretty well considering the experience. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely opportunities in there. Okay, let's take this one early on. This is Wasp. We'll go back to the start. So yeah, and he actually suggested to me the England Gambit, because I know the classic trap in the England Gambit, but it's a bit like I would almost expect most people above 1500 to be aware of that. You know, if they're a D4 player.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's one of the more obvious traps, really.
I think it's also that rare because most players probably don't play the England Gambit. So I think it does have that sort of chance of surprising your opponent. Quite often when I play the England Gambit, players will just blitz out like the London bishop F4 and they just hang the bishop instantly. Or they play something else, like they just play C4 immediately and they don't really they give you a free E5 move in. Sometimes they're just surprised and caught off guard with it. Okay, so a couple of Frenchies we've seen.
Yeah, French advance. And C3 is permissible in the French advance.
Yeah.
I told me that the other day.
Yeah, and then usually, knight will come out, the queen will come to B6 and really start pressuring the D4 pawn. And it's actually often quite tricky for a lot of beginners to hold on to this position.
Yeah. There is actually a trap that French players need to be aware of as well, which is that if you put your bishop here and then black, and if the queen has come out, then black can go, oh, I've got a big advantage. And you take, then something like knight takes or whatever. But there's, if this bishop is here, there is sometimes this risk of a check with a discovery against the queen, basically. Yeah,
and I certainly, because I used to play the advanced variation, so this bishop D7 move is actually, it's not critical in this moment, but eventually it is because it stops the trap you're thinking of because of it blocks. But I caught quite a few players off guard with that discovered attack on the queen sort of trap.
B3?
B3 is actually, one of the main lines.
It is, yeah. This player's over 1700, so yeah.
And what French defense do you sort of go for if you're met with the French? Do you play the advanced, or do you play one of the knights out, or variation?
Well, recently I've been playing the French wing gambit.
Okay, excellent. That might be something that's worth looking out for me, because I'm always interested in those tricky gambits, especially in the French.
Yeah, but I was playing the Sicilian wing gambit as well, so they're kind of related.
Okay.
So both of them feature B4 to counter this.
Yeah.
So I've had some success with that, but again, I've going back to Gotham Chess's course. He's suggesting this B3, Bishop B2 against the French.
Okay.
I've just started looking at, so I will give that a run. Okay, so we have Queen B6. That's thematic.
Yeah.
Bishop E2. And we trade off in the middle. So, I mean, you quite often bring the knight out this way in the French, but not when that pawn's defended.
So the alternative route is quite often knight H6 to F5.
Sometimes tempt this.
Sometimes that does, but depending on where the king castle's for white, like you might invite that and bring the rook out. And sort of have that open file potentially.
That's a nice square for the knight.
It's a nice square for the knight. Yeah, that's quite common.
Okay, white castles and the computer didn't like it.
Interesting. So I'm not actually.
So from here. So it's not that white has missed an opportunity. It's that here it's pretty equal, slightly in white's favor, and here it's really favoring black. But I can't tell why.
I don't see anything hanging like that. D4 pawn looks like it's got enough on it for the time being. I guess after knight to F5, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the D pawn.
Yeah.
And then really after bishop E3, trying to protect that pawn once more, that will drop B2. So maybe that pawn is a bit loose.
Okay, so now this pawn is overwhelmed.
So I think that pawn is overrun.
Knight c takes d4. Oh, wow! This is a turn up for the books. The computer now thinks that black is winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that because like after knight takes bishop, for example, the queen's going to be diverted away from the knight. Knight takes bishop comes with check.
Yeah.
And then we'll be able to take up that. Yeah, exactly. So that might be the big mistake.
Okay, but
you can do it an alternative way. I guess if queen takes bishop, knight takes bishop. I think the other way was a bit more forcing, though.
That forks king and
yeah.
Oh, but this comes with check.
It still comes, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so the alternative way was better to do it in the other order. Take the bishop first.
So maybe here blocks that. Yeah. So I think that was the critical.
Yeah.
Idea.
So take the bishop first with check.
First with check, because it's totally forcing.
Yeah.
And if queen takes, then we win a whole piece.
Yeah.
But this way round, because the recapture comes with check, black is the one that's now in check and having to respond.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have played that.
See, I'm wondering after queen c6, I just wonder if there's tactics with the d4 knight being overloaded. Like you could just play the f3 knight, taking d4.
Yeah.
But then actually queen takes queen, so that probably wouldn't work out either.
So that's what we get. So knight moves back.
Yeah. Okay.
Out here. Still slightly favors black. Great, but white has also been playing pretty quick because he's got 16 minutes, 16:40 from a 15 plus 10.
Yeah.
Black's the one who's giving it more thought, but good to develop the bishop finally. Really got pressure on this now. So now this rook here is pinned because otherwise bishop takes there. So black wants the castle. Okay. I don't know if I'd have traded my bishop right now on this, but I mean, yes, there is a light squared pawn chain in the middle, but I don't know. Do you think that's good? Decent compensation?
I think if nothing else, it at least makes the d pawn weak. It's now an isolated pawn, so I guess you could kind of justify it by maybe building pressure up on that at some point.
Okay, that's a decent move. That's forcing the bishop back.
Yes, so that the pressure's a bit off that diagonal.
Castles, and we're back to equality. Just shows you how far games can swing, you know.
How far things can swing, yeah.
Okay, and that's development and hits the queen. This is defended by the knight. So where's that queen going to go?
It's all the way back.
Okay, so that's pinned. And you can see black's idea here. And that brings us up to date.
Yeah, so similar for white, I think the e pawn is a bit vulnerable. So maybe something like queen c7, just trying to target that pawn again, could be an idea. White would have to react to that by, so moving the either. Okay, that's a sort of other way to defend.
Okay, this is now defended twice as well.
We can chase that. We could offer an exchange. Yeah, so rook out. After that exchange, the pawn will be vulnerable again. Okay, so doubling up.
Hey, Breeze, he's playing very well, though.
Yeah, he's doing well to hang in with a 1700. Interesting in between move.
takes. Rook takes here.
I guess that's the idea, and then
knight takes with defend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think maybe they were thinking rook takes and then queen takes e6, but yeah, the knight recapturing would defend that.
Also, this bishop's doing a very important job of preventing a back rank mate.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, if we trade rooks here, I think I would definitely want to recapture with the.
Correct. Yeah, because otherwise queen takes e6 and.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
Taking advantage of the pin pawn.
Yep.
But if we can just deflect this bishop away. Or the queen, actually, because now the rook's got an open file.
Exactly. Yeah, the queen needs to sort of be careful here.
And the key thing here, guys, to be aware of is to look at all the squares that pieces can jump back to on the back rank. And here, there's no square that's covered by two pieces. So, you know, this is the crucial one. And the knight can't block and nothing else can block. Yeah. Huh. I don't know how you dislodge that queen either.
Oof.
Oh no, it just drops the rook.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And the unfortunate thing with that is because queen takes is forced. There's no way white could miss it and move the king accidentally. Yeah. So it's unfortunate. I mean, black also has back rank issues themselves, so there could be some tactics. Like, for example, I think rook. Yeah, I think that's just making one.
Yeah, good game though. So we've had a couple of Frenches.
Mm-hmm.
See what's up next. So 1900 against 1030. I'm trying to find things that are relatively okay. This is another French. Okay.
French is very popular.
Well, I was playing it solidly for about 9 months and did a lot of videos on it. So, okay. So so this is Paul Reese. I actually reviewed one of his games earlier on today.
Oh, fantastic!
And another advanced variation.
Mm-hmm. And so far, okay. So I think Paul, I can just see the moves there. He plays the sort of classic pitfall in this opening where he drops the b2 pawn in the next two moves.
Okay. And then if the bishop comes out.
Yeah, because it's very natural for a beginner to play this type of move, trying to protect the d4 pawn and unfortunately dropping b2. And the sort of downside of this is you either drop the rook on a1 or sometimes if you move the knight so that the queen guards the rook, you also drop c3. So you drop quite a lot.
Yeah,
quite tough.
I have taken advantage of this myself once or twice.
Yeah.
You can quite often get the same thing against the London system, can't you, with queen b6?
Mm-hmm.
Are there other openings where you see that same idea?
I mean, there's a couple of openings where it's actually dangerous to take on b2. There's like a lot of like poison pawn variations of like the Sicilian, for example, where sometimes taking b2 can actually disadvantage you. There's also a line
as well in a couple of
there's a line in the Caro-Can where taking on b2 is also quite dangerous, but only if you take a1 because your queen gets trapped. But okay, so it looks like here, I think the move to play was queen takes c3.
Yeah.
Because after you win that pawn, it's like your 2 pawns down and your center's kind of a bit unstable.
This is now a very strong pawn chain as well.
Yeah, very strong as well.
Locked up position.
It makes white's bishop very bad as well. The light squared bishop because it can't get out. But
it's interesting, isn't it? You know, when you get this kind of, I always just think Massif Central in the middle of like this range of mountains in the middle of France. When you get a really gummed up middle of the board, sometimes bishops can still be very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you know, if you could get your light square bishop like here, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, then what you've effectively done is you've kind of divided the board into two halves. And if you can get your pieces looking this way and all your opponent's stuff is over here, I've had games where my opponent just gets everything stuck on the wrong side of the wall and you just demolish them on this side. Mm-hmm. But in general, but knights can't negotiate their way around this kind of structure very well either, I don't think. So
Yeah, it's quite difficult for it to access the good squares, like on e4, for example, because the pawns kind of cut off the squares the knight would have to be on to jump there in the first place.
yeah.
So
So let's see. So development. Now black takes the pawn. Castles develops the knight again to e7, which we saw. Computer thought maybe that's not the best idea. I don't think that's a convincing attack on the queen.
yeah, so sort of one. I mean, your rook really wants to come to b1 ultimately because it's an open file. You hit the queen will just move, and now your rook is kind of misplaced. And that's like another sort of, again, common thing where, and it's completely human, natural to do that, but now you're probably going to want to remaneuver your rook back.
And now this rook is very weak, and now what you've got is you've got a high value piece, a major piece, whose job is to defend a single pawn.
Yeah,
which is generally a bad idea. Simon Williams calls that an artificial attack.
Yeah, the one move threats. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think rook b2 is, yeah, really the only. Oh no. What is there here then? Oh, we've got overwhelm on the pawn.
Could just be that. Although after knight takes, if knight takes pawn, you could maybe try and pin that knight on by queen a1.
Yeah.
Maybe the knight won't actually be able to escape.
Queen there, b6.
And then just rook would take the knight at that point. Yeah. Okay, so c3 does fork two pieces. I can see that was played. But it's a kind of artificial because rook takes, the knight would come with an attack on the queen. The queen would have to move, which would give you time to then save the knight.
So you're thinking queen c3?
No, so I think pawn c3 I can just kind of see on the...
Yeah.
It looks like a fork, but after rook takes knight, the queen has to move, which gives white the opportunity to move the knight. So they actually don't get to win anything.
Yeah, there we go. And it now says white is smashing it because rook takes a2.
Exactly, yeah, rook takes a2, and then we'll save the knight.
Oh, what? That was totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
And black thought for 3 seconds on this.
Yeah, and the queen's not trapped. The queen can move anywhere. c7, for example, or even d8. So
these are out. So
unless he thought, okay, queen takes rook, and then pawn takes knight, and I'm getting two pieces for that could be the thinking, but just with the lack of development for black,
yeah,
and also giving white that queen and the bishop on that diagonal potentially. It's interesting because now the board's actually opened up so that white's bishop is actually pretty decent now, whereas like five moves ago it was a prisoner.
Yeah. And that's another thing. That's another thing that I kind of pick up on this idea from watching, titled players, is them kind of putting a piece in a position where, or leaving a piece in a position where they know it's complete useless at this point in time. But the plan is that later on, once pawns start trading off, and a lot of like beginners and stuff it'll be a nice surprise that suddenly your piece comes to life.
Yeah,
you can plan for that. And very often in the French, this guy, the light square bishop in the French, can be really poor.
Yeah.
But then you suddenly play f6 and open things up, and then later on in the game, you can turn into the hero of the hour. Okay, so that was a useful move. Important to get this bishop out, although it doesn't have that much scope. Maybe here. Okay, check. Yeah. And the king's been forced to move, right? Bishop retreats, now looking at the knight. So white is up a queen for a rook and two pawns at this point in time. So materially, it's not a massive difference, but it's more down to...
I think it's just, down to the development of the pieces, the king's safety, the fact that we have a queen when the king is unsafe sort of compounds. And I probably wouldn't have made that recapture, even though I think the evaluation didn't change. So that suggests that was actually one of the top moves to play. But generally, just when you're down material, you want to avoid exchanges. Keep a piece on the board that makes it a bit complicated. Every piece you exchange brings you closer to an end game where you're material down. So we want to avoid that usually.
Yeah. And I think while white still has a queen, the issue of the bishop pair is less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're down material ultimately, so I think even that would be an even bigger reason just to avoid.
In addition, this is currently black's only active piece.
Yeah, that's true. That's another point.
You know, so it's just traded off. A decent knight, and still this king's perfectly safe.
Yeah, also opening up the rook to take it. Now the king's kind of in a mating net almost. The king can't really escape an attack.
Bishop out, looking at the knight, so the queen's defending the knight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just don't see how black escapes this kind of attack that's coming on. So,
so in a way, what you have to do in a position like this is to say, okay, if I'm going to have any chance in this game, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
What black has to do is get both of these rooks active. If black doesn't do that, black is hands down lost.
Yeah. And yeah, I think Paul's doing the right thing. He's keeping the rook on the 7th rank. Rooks are extremely dangerous on the 7th rank, and it's also just setting up a classic queen and rook mating attack. Exactly, yeah. So Paul's
that's quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems to have fallen apart pretty quickly there. And this rook's still in the box. This rook's still in the box, you know. I think something like this, we've got to try and get something, some kind of defense. There, rook here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like we've got, so that would create like a back rank issue with the rook on the F file blocking the king's escape. So maybe that could be black's sort of puncher's chance to come back, but Paul still has 9 minutes left, so hopefully he can convert this.
He's got an overwhelm on this as well.
Yeah. Although interestingly, I probably wouldn't take that just to keep the rook, because technically they could exchange off, but I mean, you would still be left with a bishop and queen. Yeah, so that looks quite inviting. Queen b4, I think, is probably, that at least creates mate in 1 as a threat.
Queen b4 first.
And I actually don't see any escape to that, because after queen b4, I don't think there's any defense to stopping.
Queen b4 threatens queen's mate, hands down.
And I don't think
the king he can't go here anyway. He can't go here. Can't go here. King's only got one move, and this is where you want some jump.
Yeah. King. Because queen after queen b4, even if the king moves to d8, and queen e7 still mate anyway.
Yep, it is. Yeah.
So I think that's mating 2. In fact, it is mating 2. We can see in the eval bar it's that must be the line.
This is m2, yeah. But Paul is like a cat playing with a mouse right now.
Yeah.
But that is the move.
Yeah, and we just have to approach.
Can't see the evaluation bar.
Yeah. Which is why it's useful to approach every position almost like you're playing a puzzle. Like take a sort of pulse check at the middle game. Okay, do I have any checks, capturing threats? It's very easy to lose sight of that, but it's really important, especially when there's a lot of tension in the position. It's worth stopping to do that.
There we go.
That's good.
There's really nothing that can be done now.
Nope.
Even that doesn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good job, Paul. Yeah. Unlucky Hanoi John.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot Hanoi could have done there, I think, in the end. I think his big mistake was just the exchanging the queen for the rook idea, I think.
Yeah, and you can see. I mean, that was played at, what was it, 3 seconds as well?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, one of the least amount of times of any move in the entire game by the looks of it.
Yeah, and it's so often. And the bottom line, if you're playing a 15+10 game, you need to sit on your hands for at least 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Do you have a kind of trick, or have you used any kind of technique for forcing yourself to slow down, or saying, okay, I think I found the best move, I'm going to force myself to consider at least one other candidate move?
Well, yeah, that's actually just the question I sort of force myself to do. It's just, if I see one move, it's just having the discipline to say, okay, let me at least identify one other candidate move. And if it's bad, then that's fine. It sort of supports playing the first move anyway. But you might find a better move, or
this one's over.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, what else we got? 989. Oh, hang on. Oh, we've seen Bot Boy. Let's try and mix them up.
I think there's a local Scottish guy in the tournament, by the looks of it, Deanne.
Let's do that then. Okay, so Deanne against Neil from the Netherlands, by the look of things. There we go. All right. And we have a D4. Horvitz defense. This is unusual.
Yeah, it's not that common. Although it could. Okay, so it's kind of transposes to a more
problem is this bishop already. Okay, this is quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe bishop pin, no? Okay, so this is now, is this the Colley system on White's side? Similar. It's like the London, but without developing the bishop first.
Yeah, I think it's similar. My theory, I must admit, isn't too good on D4 opening, so I don't know a lot of the names. But I think it might be.
Yeah. So I'm not convinced by this one, because it's just begging for C3.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and that's quite a common sort of. Now your bishop's kind of locked out the pawn. It's on the one side of the pawn chain, I think. On this diagonal, yeah.
What future does this bishop have?
Yeah.
Does this help White in any way?
I mean, I guess it's sort of, just maybe grab some space. I guess your A4 could be a threat.
A4 first here is a lot more of a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then...
Yeah, it sort of disguises the intentions to trap.
Yeah.
So knight over there is a bit sort of awkward.
I mean, the thing I'd be thinking is, where's this king going to go? And yes, the king could go either way.
Yeah.
But you want to get your knights towards the center.
Yeah, knight D2 looks much better.
Yeah.
A4 as well, your move, I think, was actually probably a strong move as well, just to sort of threaten the bishop.
Force A6 to give the bishop a hideaway. Then the bishop's staring down the barrel of a dot.
Exactly, yeah, right on it.
Pretty much out of the game. My instinct is that's premature.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like this, just because knight takes knight, and now the pawn structure is a bit compromised, and that bishop's slowly opening up.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. And now black, now the eval bars bang equal.
Yeah.
Whereas this bishop should have been, consigned out into the cold for the rest of the game. Really.
Yeah.
A lot of it. And now, okay.
So
F4 is a thought.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only move to hang on to it. Yeah.
No. Ooh, no. That just abandons the pawn. Yeah.
We're also opening up that dangerous diagonal for the queen coming down to H4. It looks like that wasn't played, but that can just be annoying generally. And now that bishop's actually
with no knight here to protect these squares, huh?
And all of a sudden, black's bishop's starting to become a really good piece with no pawns. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you something that I've been thinking about more recently is this idea that not all pawns are created equal, that center pawns, somebody once described it as that if your D and E pawns are worth $1, then the wing pawns C and F are worth like 90 cents, then the B and G are worth 80 cents, and the A and H are worth like 60 cents. That they're not equal, and actually having pawns in the center is far more important than, you know. Mm-hmm. Did you have any kind of way of evaluating?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not consciously in that sort of way, but I would agree. Like I definitely would say like the A and H pawns in particular are probably worth like, and I've heard this described before. This isn't me coming up with this, but I watched a video recently with Yasser Seirawan, who's a sort of a famous sort of old school GM. And he was evaluating the A and H pawn. This was a beginner lesson, but he was saying, think about the A and H pawn is worth half a pawn because they only attack half the squares as all your other pawns.
Correct. Yeah,
there's definitely a sort of sliding scale, like the E and D pawns being definitely worth the most, and even the C pawn is still relatively central, and the F pawn in many cases. But yeah, the B and G are you're sort of incrementally getting slightly less from your pawns as you go towards the edge of the board. And usually the central pawns are really good because they take away the important central squares that your opponent wants to land their pieces on, like their knights on and that sort of stuff. So I think that's one thing that's often underrated is your pawns do a good job of taking away space from your opponent more than just being in the center for sort of no reason.
Okay, so we've dropped a couple of pawns here.
Yeah.
The white.
So we'll remove 12, okay.
And now, moving the king here has just pinned that pawn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we're attacking the pinned piece. Good play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hang on. Okay. Whew. I don't know. And now the computer's saying that black is dominating. Is one pawn up, but +6 in evaluation or -6 in evaluation.
Yeah, and I think it's just coming back down to like, yeah, that black bishop's actually ironically became one of the stronger pieces on the board now. When it was completely nullified at the start. And yeah, just the king's safety is a bit dubious for white at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
So this rook's actually hanging. The queen could take this rook and the pawn couldn't recapture because of the pin. So we'll see if... Okay, so white.
Ooh.
We're not quite threatening mate because the queen still defends.
Yeah.
G2.
It's scrappy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love listening to Yasser's lectures and stuff like that. He's got a really hypnotic. If you want to go to sleep at night, then Yasser Seirawan is a great way. But
yeah, so that looks like a free knight because the rook can still capture.
Yeah.
The knight, and there's still no mate threat because the queen
can't capture, but this guy can.
Yeah.
But white doesn't see it.
Yeah. So, and maybe there's sort of discovered ideas with moving e3 and your c1 bishop attacks their queen. That could be in the air. I know it's like a sort of one move threat. It does open up their bishop, which could be an issue, but
yeah,
rook takes knight, I think, was the opportunity there.
Yeah. Okay, so now the knight gives up its own life here, and again, white doesn't cap. Oh, white's threatening mate now, but it's easily refuted. Oh no, it's not.
Yeah, maybe queen h5 would defend.
Oh wow, what a roller coaster!
Yeah.
No, you could have just taken. You can just take. Still threaten mate, force a trade of queens.
Yeah.
And then win the knight. Oh, maybe. But so you've snatched a pawn there, and now, oh my goodness me! Now it's gone all the way back to black.
Mm-hmm. So there's a chance here.
Not play it. Well, it is actually. Free pawn, bishop takes, queen takes.
In theory, yeah. Although maybe we could throw in rook takes bishop in between.
No, now it likes white again. Oh my good lord.
Yeah, because I think we can throw in rook takes bishop. Yeah, this one, that comes with an attack, and then
It's the queen.
hits the queen. Probably then, if the queen wants to stay in that diagonal, like if it plays h6, then just rook h5, and it skewers the queen and the knight. So there's quite a lot of
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Forks thing.
Yeah, hitting everything. So I think
Good move. Well done, White. And let's see. Yes.
Yeah. So as forecasted. Yep.
Okay. Now, where's that queen going to go?
Yep.
Okay, and now that's forced.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a free move because it comes with discovered check.
Okay, we might have a. No, we don't. I was going to say we might have a mating sequence here, like moving the bishop away. It's quite thematic here, where you have, like, just say, for example, bishop g6 check, for example, force the king back to h, yeah, and then rook up, bringing the king back out, and then the queen swoops along to h5.
Yeah.
But the queen can actually come back to h6 and block the final check. So unfortunately, it doesn't work. But that's something to look out for.
Yeah, that's one of those mating patterns that I think has a name, but there's so many.
Yeah, it probably does. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we don't take back.
Don't take with the rook.
The rook in blunder.
I mean, this has got free knight here as well.
Free knight, yeah, quite a lot of stuff hanging.
It's a discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're doubling up the attack on the bishop. Interesting, and this is a really nice pattern to memorize as well, is that a knight and a bishop like this, the knight actually covers all of these squares, but so does the bishop in a way. Yeah. So if you want to prevent an opponent's knight or bishop from being able to advance, this pattern can be very, very handy.
Yeah.
The knight's also hanging though. Mm-hmm. Oh no, it's not, because then bishop here wins the queen.
Yeah, discovering, yeah.
Okay. Now we can just take the pawn for free.
Oh, okay. So that's
what? Now queen takes, king escapes. I don't know.
Well, after there's the rook's actually hanging. So after queen takes queen, we have pawn takes rook.
Okay.
And then just because there's no pin
as well, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's going to swing here to black.
Oh. Yeah. Now it's all black.
So now we have. I mean, black still has a hanging piece, but I mean, bishop f4 would protect the knight, I guess. So because I thought for a moment there was two hanging pieces, but that kind of does the job. Although actually we could maybe still try and chase that bishop away somehow.
Yeah. Okay. Bishop can't. Yeah. Can't.
Yeah, because we'll just.
Yeah,
probably.
What? It still likes black though. Hang on.
Oh,
game's over. Let's see. Where did we get to?
Yeah. So I think we were somewhere around move 30-ish.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go.
So maybe they thought there was some kind of back rank, because it looks like there's a back rank issue here. Because the knight's defended, but it's undefended now, and I think maybe we just
king takes.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's white again. I can't catch my breath from this game.
Yeah, it's quite up and down.
Lead has changed so many times. Okay, so here you can defend with the knight or with the rook.
Mm-hmm.
There's no check option. Or yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. That would work too. Yeah.
And now white is dominant. So there's a hanging pawn.
Mm-hmm.
There's a threat of this check.
Yeah, I think
this isn't
in this position. Black still has to be careful, like with there's like common mating patterns with the knight jumping in in combination with the rook in the corner.
Right.
Maybe that was a bit premature, but wait.
And now
so here we have a tactic. Exactly.
Cure the king, win the rook.
Yeah.
And he finds it. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
This is a...
Okay. That's swinging's...
that's hung the rook.
Yeah. Maybe he meant to play b5 potentially, or maybe he just didn't.
I think I would have taken with a knight though.
Keep your pawn structure a bit intact. Okay, so now we get to
take the pawn.
Yeah, we're double attacking.
And the bishop's pinned as well, so the king has to come and defend the bishop. Lose the knight.
Okay, yeah. In fact, I probably would have done your idea, because at least if rook takes knight, you had a bishop skewer on the rook on d5. So
yes, so if king here,
rook takes knight.
Takes this, and then we have this with
and that probably would have happened if that was if that move was played. But yeah, okay, so we.
What? Now white is winning according to the machine. How?
I guess maybe a6. Everything, all pawns are defended. Yeah, and what's going to happen is probably the rook's going to have to sacrifice itself for one of the pawns eventually, because the king is just going to walk over to c7 and a7 potentially. Okay,
yeah, so we give up the idea of this, and it's all about this pawn here.
Yeah, and the bishop protects both. Actually, it does a really good job, because the bishop still protects the a2. So you just leave the g2 pawn there.
That is really fascinating. Yeah. So okay, but now
the rook's able to collect a5. And
okay, so this is really, really fascinating, because here this pawn is the key to the whole game, right? This is inconsequential. That's what we're saying, right? And this bishop and pawn pattern, very, very common in endings where they defend each other, yeah? So this was the move. And now we go from +10 for white with an innocuous pawn move. Suddenly black has won, basically, it's saying. Oh, and we drop the bishop.
Yeah, tough.
And it's all over. And we know that black goes on to win. So
yeah,
what a roller coaster. I think anyone to analyze that game will get so much out of it. Right. How we do? We've got half an hour. Time really flies, you know.
It really flies, doesn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so now what have we got? Who haven't we seen? Paul Reese we've seen. Elite Jonathan against Hey Hey Bye Bye. There's a 1,000 point. How about we've done Hanoi John. We've done Hanoi John. Anyone we haven't seen? Crichton. These guys we haven't seen. Okay, let's start from the beginning. And now we have French again. And we're looking from black's point of view. Okay. Ooh. This can be such an aggressive move, f4, if played at the right time. Do we have to be afraid of this? No, because bishop's defending that, and g3 is perfectly playable. Okay, so black's capturing towards us. Oh, hang on. That's a spoiler. Okay, so black captures towards the center, hitting the knight. Queen recaptures. Okay. And now, if pawn takes here, you can... I mean, how often, given the opportunity to trade queens and force your opponent's king to move, is it nearly always a good thing?
I guess it really just depends on, because that pawn, after you take e4, it's going to be captured back anyway. So I just don't see that there's a big advantage to doing that.
Yeah, it's no advantage.
And also, like, there's kind of when the queens are off the board sometimes, because I know it's quite tempting just to exchange queens and damage castling rights, but when the queens are off, castling rights aren't as important when the queens are off, because you can kind of,
because you really want to activate your king
exactly,
in the end game rather than have it hidden in the corner. Yeah,
kind of like an end game without the queens. Even there's a lot of other stuff on the board. Okay, so I guess we're sort of slowly threatening d4 here, pinning the knight potentially.
Okay, this knight's in an absolute pin, so black is actually free to recapture. Uses the pawn. So now we have quite an open board, like a French exchange variation. Okay. Computer doesn't like that. We do have the option of queen check and castle out of trouble, or simply attacking the pin piece, and that will win material. Or is there a way out of this? Check.
Usually a3 is the kind of move where it's like, I'm attacking you at the same time as you're attacking me. And like if the bishop comes back, then maybe b4. Yeah, so it could even be like that. Okay, if you take me, I'll take you.
Yeah.
And then the knight's free to hop away, potentially.
Okay,
that does drop the knight, unfortunately. Yeah.
And here, like we say, when you're material down, you've just lost a piece. Why trade queens?
Exactly. Yeah, you want to avoid the temptation, because a lot of the subtle moves that are good at equal positions are no longer good, because you're just exchanging down, and that takes priority over anything else. Like, avoid the exchanges when you're down material.
Yeah.
Give yourself that chance to have an extra piece to complicate the position or attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, so basically what white has done now is said, okay, I'm a piece down, let's go straight into an ending.
Exactly, material down.
Material down. It's the quickest way to lose. And trading again.
And trading again. And even here, I think black maybe missed something here. If we go back one move, I think the better recapture was after bishop takes knight, we take their b pawn. That's a discovered attack on the king and wins the rook with a queen.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, black recaptures in 5.3 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, always worth I think just getting into the habit of saying, okay, I don't know who said it, the classic line, if you find a good move, look for a better one.
Look for a better one, yeah.
But in this case, absolutely. Even if you think it's the most obvious thing in the world, force yourself to think, well, okay, what else is there?
Yeah.
Just get into the habit of thinking that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this was really a blunder on black's part.
Yeah. And I think the engine still likes it for black just because there's still material ahead. So any exchange directly is good for them anyway.
And white's got 3 pawn islands, and nobody's got. Oh, that was just a.
Yeah, so if the knight was pinned with a rook on e8, that would have been good, but unfortunately the knight's free to capture.
Okay. So yeah, we've already seen that black wins the game, but they've not made it easy for themselves now. It's under attack, but it's really out in the cold there. Now here, you need to activate your rooks. We've had this conversation. So here, obviously, we're attacking a rook. So that's a kind of in-between tactic. Computer likes white. Rook A to E8. If I was going to move either one, it'd probably be the other one, but do we trade? We do not. Okay. And that's winning for white.
Winning for white. Yeah, I don't necessarily see the big idea.
No. That's also a move.
Yep.
I think actually counterattack the bishop. The bishop on a board like this, that bishop is far more useful, I would say, than a knight.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and that pins the knight. So f6.
Have to play f6 now.
It's essential, yeah. Computer doesn't like that move. Sometimes it feels like players around 1,000 and below can have, it's almost like you've got one move plans.
Yeah.
So I really don't get the point of this move. I mean, is it this and attack the bishop? But then you've got to say, well, look, if I do that and the bishop goes there, do I have a better position, or does my opponent have a better position? I mean,
yeah, I think that's the big thing. Yeah, it's just about anticipating. I think, and that can make all the difference. Just if you try and ask yourself, okay, if I do this, what will they do? Just asking yourself that one extra question can unlock like a whole nother layer of your sort of chess, I believe.
100%, yeah. So this looks like a good move. The computer didn't like it, possibly because of the en passant option.
Yeah, I think so.
Isolate these pawns.
It takes g6.
We don't have that. We have bishop takes instead. Now, would you recapture with the pawn and have a passed pawn, or rook risk the trade-off?
I mean, if you take with the rook, you have to anticipate that they may take with the rook and isolate your pawns regardless. So sometimes those decisions can be quite tricky. At least taking with this pawn does kind of make the f5 pawn weak, but yeah, they're just going to protect it with g4.
Yeah, they are, yeah. There you go. And then rook f8 anyway, rook hf8.
Yeah, so I think rook f8 is now redundant because you're effectively moving your rook onto a blocked file.
Yeah. And having a sorry. Oh, okay, there's a threat here. Of fork, and if rook takes, pawn takes rook. So here, I think that's important move to cover that.
Yeah, bishop c4 is a good move.
Oh yeah, or c8 does the same thing.
I prefer bishop c4 though, because it at least keeps the bishop more active on the board, covering more squares.
Yeah.
Relegating it to
c8. Rook now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
c8, we're kind of we're only looking at one square really, a couple of squares.
Okay, lifted the rook. That's what I was kind of anticipating. King's now coming up. Where's that king heading for? He can't go there or there. Yep. Now the rook's maneuvering around. Okay. Trade, and off goes Eddie. Steady Eddie. Now the king can't get into these two squares. This bishop is, again, you see, we've got the same structure here. Now it's the bishop that's stuck, because the bishop can't move to any of these squares without being captured by the knight.
Yeah.
And now it's equal-ish. No, it is bang equal.
Yeah, I think the better move there for white was to probably just go after that pawn. The pawn is so far up the board that it's what we call overextended. It's difficult to protect that pawn, and you're actually just a pawn down.
Yeah. Oh, now it likes white again. So is it saying black should have...
I think black should have taken the pawn.
Should there put the king on the side of the board, maybe come after the knight. Now white's winning again. We are seeing some real nail biters here, roller coaster rides. Okay. And now it's bang equal. And I think anybody around 1,000 or below who's watching this should really take heart from these last two games that we've just seen in particular, because it's showing you that there are so many opportunities to get an advantage and to go on to win, you know, when you're playing at beginner level. So, you know, almost just don't ever give up. We have a lot. I find some players who literally, I think that check would make sense here. There's a lot of players who just make a point of never resigning ever. Are you one of those people, or do you just... I guess the higher up the ranking you get, the ratings you get, you know that your opponents are just not going to slip up. Yeah,
that's pretty much it. And I think the only time I'll play on to the end is if time control is a factor. If you see your opponent has low time and there's a chance of swindling a win or a stalemate, then I'll play on in those circumstances, but really only in blitz. If you're playing a game where they have more than a couple of minutes, that's long enough that they'll be able to convert in most cases. But yeah, below at this kind of level, below like maybe like 1,000, 1,100, there's, as we've saw, there's always a chance that one moves can swing the game. So it might be worth.
I mean, if we see the graph of this game, it's going to be like a bloody ECG, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, now the king here. So now I fancy that.
Yeah, I agree. And it does teach you to be really resourceful playing on in these positions when you're down material. It can make you sort of, because you have to play aggressively to sort of come back.
Right, defends.
Oh,
yeah. Oof, what? Now, in general, you want to keep your king towards the center of the board, but...
Yeah, I guess the idea here is that like the knight is the only defender of c4, so let's try and dislodge the knight in that point.
Okay, so wants to come in here.
I think that's maybe the idea.
Yeah. Now black's winning.
Yep. So I think it's just we're winning this pawn, and
yeah.
Sometimes one pawn can make all the difference because all of a sudden you've got a passed pawn, and that can be enough.
Now what we say, bishop takes with check. Yes, well done.
Yeah, bishop takes.
Still want rook e4.
Yeah.
Rook e4 was a boxing movie, wasn't it? No. Okay. Computer didn't like that as much. It's completely one position now going to slightly less one. Here, I think one of the reasons is the pawn is guarding these squares and the bishop is guarding these squares.
Mm-hmm.
The king's actually almost out of...
Yeah, it's kind of like a back rank.
Here, suddenly the king can escape and the pawn can't promote because rook takes. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, coming after that pawn. Sides, okay. Yeah, so there's a clear threat here. Rook there, check. This is forced. We get a queen and win. Okay.
Yeah,
and it's mate in 4 now. Good. Okay, so what's the queen's covering these? Now this is where it really, really helps to be able to colour in the squares. Now, obviously, you can't do that when you're playing over the board.
Mm-hmm.
Crayons and start colouring in the squares because you get thrown out. So this is a puzzle. Black has forced mate in 3. Rook here, and then the king only has 1 square. Is that it? Oh no, yeah, surely. Here. Oh no, the king can go there as well. Yeah,
bishop d5 looks to be the start of it.
Which one?
Bishop d5, I think, is a good start, which is what was played.
Okay, yeah.
And then I think followed up by queen h4 is not only like a sort of fork, but I think that's actually mate.
Yes. Now here we have queen h1.
That frees up g3. Yeah, and this is quite common as well. So you really want to bring your rook over to the e file, cut off the final escape square, and then that check, any subsequent check is probably going to be mate. But okay, so the king will escape to probably.
That's forced mate in 13.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very, very hard to convert a 1 position.
Yeah, especially when there's still a couple of things left in the board. But
okay, we just grab some material.
Mm-hmm.
Here, there's another check from the bishop.
Yeah.
Which forces the king to here. Otherwise, queen takes that.
Yeah.
Then that would be pretty winning, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, pawn's now pinned, and we're threatening queen takes, and rook can't block. So
maybe
okay. But now the king's in kind of a dovetail situation. So something like this, king here, rook can't block because of the bishop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's looking good as an idea.
So again, here, what Black's doing is forgetting to use all of his pieces, and this is a really, really powerful move, cutting off all of those squares.
Okay.
And finally,
so,
checkmate.
Yeah.
And it uses the bishop.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Oh, right. Time for maybe one more. We shall see. Who haven't we seen? We haven't seen CW.
No. I don't think, if we've seen.
We'll have a look at Thin White Cute and Crichton, as long as it. Oh, it's a Caracan. Okay. Now, advanced variation. Okay. So this is Thin White Duke rated 858 against Crichton 262, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever played the Caro as black?
Not as black, no.
What do you play against? Do you have a weapon?
Yeah, I play here. I play something called the Tal variation. So rather than knight, I play h4.
Oh wow, okay.
And this is basically my sort of opening choices. Whatever usually is deemed to be an aggressive way to play, I'll just pick that and try and learn it. This has an immediate threat because a lot of Caro-Can players play e6 on autopilot and they'll just block in the bishop. So that's almost an autopilot move. Yeah, exactly. And then the bishop's trapped.
Right. So that's a bit like, was it Eric Rosen did one I saw the other day against the London, where when players blitz out their bishop, and he plays, I think, h5.
Right. Okay.
And there's a bishop trap in that as well.
Excellent. Yeah.
So if they play on autopilot, okay.
Yeah. And even the sort of good thing about that is even if they don't play on autopilot, h4 is actually quite a useful move in a lot of positions anyway. So it's not like a one move threat, if you like. But
Simon Williams would be proud of that one.
Yeah.
So here Black's playing like a reverse London.
Mm-hmm.
And again, very, very typical London thing. So if bishop takes. But another option here is to allow this and then to recapture with that, giving Black more control over this key square as well, e4.
Actually, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The knight might want to come in later, you know?
Yeah.
Magnus has played that move. Okay, but bishop retreats. We don't exchange. Good, keep some tension. And now we've gone French.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like a French advance. In fact, I'm sure I've had this position countless times. So, but it feels like Black's down a tempo somehow.
Yeah, I guess it's because they've got the bishop out. So I guess in one hand you could argue, well, it's an improved French because the bishop is out. But then on the other hand, you could say, well, you don't have that an immediate, like the knight c6 and queen b6 coming against the d pawn.
He's only moved the bishop twice, but
yeah,
I just feel like White has the development lead with 3 pieces out on the board and castled, but Black has a fairly good, strong pawn structure. Here, Black has the option of capturing.
I probably would do that because at least then the e5 pawn becomes weak by default of not having the d pawn there to support.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've potentially got, yeah. I mean, a lot of the plans here could be similar to the French, for like queen b6 potentially coming out at some point. But I still think, yeah, maybe just taking
for White as well.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah.
Here we go, queen b6 for play by Black, and that the b2 pawn is obviously hanging now.
Mm-hmm.
So we push. And now the trap is potentially on that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, knight takes. Where is it?
I think we've got one because we have c3 played. It won't be hanging technically.
Okay. Yeah. Why take with the bishop? Why not take inwards with the pawn?
Yeah, I would take with the pawn because at least because yeah, now your e5 pawn is a bit weak.
Yes. Yeah. Takes. Yeah. There's no dark square bishop so that was also an option, but so where's this knight headed? Maybe there, I don't know.
Yeah, quite often the knight comes to f5, but and it's a funny looking move, the knight coming out to the edge of the board. Normally it comes to f5, at least in the French anyway, and the plans are kind of similar.
Oh, we're up to date.
Bishop b4.
It's the rook.
So just move the rook. Yeah, exactly. Something like that would be fine. I'd rather move the rook up than back to f1 potentially. Okay, so this is undefended a piece, unfortunately, for.
Oh, you're right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Queen's defense of that. Yeah.
So it's just a case of.
So if Crity notices, Crity has noticed. Good. Okay.
Unfortunately, there's no real discoveries on that bishop because the knight doesn't really attack anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's this hitting the queen, but then if pawn takes...
Yeah, that's what I was looking at that, but yeah, pawn takes would defend the bishop. And if b took, then you just retreat the bishop. Okay, so...
Now here it's tempting just to trade down, but I like that bishop. I don't think we'd want to lose that. And even just tucking this bishop away and keeping the pressure on this corner of the board as well is...
Yeah, I think that, bishop a6 I think is a good move. Bishop a6, bishop g6. Bishop a6 probably is a bit more active facing.
I think that one. Just keeping this diagonal open, it seems to be... I don't know. I mean, they're both good diagonals.
I think they're both, like, they both have their pros and cons.
So what would you do if you were white now?
If I was white, a3 looks to be a candidate move. Unfortunately, just because we're a piece down, like, it's going to be quite tough to play this position out.
Can't go back there. It's only really got two squares.
Yeah, so bishop e7, or even just exchanging now seems okay because, again, we're material up.
Yeah.
And also the coordination of white's pieces is a bit awkward after bishop takes knight. Okay, so bishop e7, that's fine.
It's not a threat. Black still hasn't castled again. That feels slow, but it's done it anyway. But it does give the knight a route.
Yeah, that's true.
And then if king castles, there's that threat. If the knight goes there. Okay, hitting the rook. What do you think? Rook c3, get on the open file, double up rooks. They've got two attackers on that pawn also. Don't know. Material, free stuff.
Yeah, knight takes d4 is completely,
really isolated.
Yeah, and that's often sort of the trick with the French and the card openings is when the d4 pawn goes, the e5 all of a sudden will go very quickly afterwards. So just queen takes d4 seems logical.
Now white is down 4 points of material.
Yeah. And if this knight moves, we're probably going to exchange queens and...
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, just invite that because we're now...
Really? I mean, you've got two bishops against the knight.
One knight.
The quicker you can get into an ending now, So do you think this is... Here's another thing that I think has become more of a major thought process the more I've played is, like, in any middle game, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set up an end game that I know should be winning. Right? So here, for example, for me, trade queens, because two bishops versus one knight in the ending, doesn't really matter what the pawns look like. Two bishops against one knight should be won, basically, shouldn't it?
Yeah, 100. Yeah. That's one thing. I've stuck to pretty religiously. Is basically just that general rule. If you're up material, I mean, it's different if you're only up one pawn, maybe there's a bit of a difference there, but if you're up +2, +3, always exchange. I think it's a lot harder to go wrong following that, especially exchanging queens at least, because you just remove white always has that puncher's chance, as I sort of refer to it. As long as they have a queen left, they can swindle a mate out of nowhere, get rid of the queen, and now there's almost no chance that they'll at least surprise you with a quick mate.
They'll have to yeah. So in a situation like this, if you're black, do you think like King D7 is preferable to castling?
That's actually, it's a good point, because you don't really want your king tucked out of the board on an endgame. You want your king ready to come into the game.
Yeah. Your king switches from being your biggest liability to one of your strongest pieces. Exactly. Suddenly, when the queens come off.
Yeah. And as long as your king is safe, like if white still had, for example, all the minor pieces, just no queens on the board is probably still a bit too dangerous if there's like 2 bishops and 2 knights lingering about. But in this case, if it's just a rook ending, effectively where black's up material, then it maybe isn't too bad. So King D7 would be a candidate move definitely here. I would play King D7 over castling.
Yeah. Another thing I like about this is it covers all 3 of these squares, preventing these. Oh, no. That's unnecessary. Yeah. I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah, because we're so far up in material, I think it's still fine. But it'd be interesting to see if we look back at the engine, if we do, or maybe Curtin or can do that. I think King D7 is probably slightly preferable.
That's also a thought.
Yeah, and I would just exchange that bishop for the knight. Again, just snap that up, damage the pawn structure, because the knight's you're going to force an exchange that way, because if the knight moves, the rook behind it falls.
Yeah. Also, both of these pawns are actually pinned right now, because if either one moves,
anyone moves, it drops the thing behind it. Yeah,
I'd play that.
Yeah, 100%
in a flash.
Yeah.
Now this is also off. This pin.
Yeah, that's off. But that's
you get this situation as well, where it's the first rook that moves onto the open file. So if black now meets it, then the first one to capture loses the file.
Correct. Yeah, and that's quite a big beginner mistake, where they'll just exchange rooks, but not really realizing that they're actually giving up the file, which is the point of the rook being there, versus just being there because there's no other sort of square for it to go on.
Yeah. I'd pre-move the recapture at this point.
Yeah, so for the avoidance of any doubt, white should not capture that rook because they're already down material. So if anything, I would actually, if this was an equal position, I would leave the rook there, let them take us, and we will recapture. But because it's not equal, I will decline the option of trading and move the rook. So maybe, unfortunately, B1. Okay, so that, I don't like that, because
I thought that knight was really powerful there.
Yeah.
It's kind of holding back this bishop to some degree. But
there's not really anywhere for that knight to jump into that will cause any issues.
I mean, you can have a scratch at that, but it's just...
Yeah, but then even A6 or something cuts out that knight. I don't like that, because bishop takes knight, and when pawn recaptures, then how do you defend that pawn? So the other rook will just come out, and so.
And here you can see, if black had the option of having his king on this square rather than there, it's so much nicer, because I mean, okay, need to think about an active king in the ending, but this is not going to end well for white, for the duke.
So
I would retreat the knight, have another pop at that bishop.
Yeah, so regaining control of the open file. Yeah, I think rook c3 seems like a logical plan. So because of that, maybe knight e2 can at least prevent c3.
Covers that square.
And that's kind of like the way to try and think about it. It's like, what's the opponent's idea, and how do we stop that? That unfortunately doesn't stop it. So rook c3 is probably the best move, and it'll win the a3 pawn at a minimum, I think.
Do you think that's another kind of feature that evolves with your chess over time? Is that you look at pieces sometimes less and squares more. You know, you're actually playing for squares, even empty squares.
Yeah.
Control of empty squares.
That's the key word. It's the control of the board. Yeah.
Yeah. Like here with this move, you're preventing your opponent from going there.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, try and think of my pieces as like, you know, when you've got like, I think there's like an option on chess.com, like for like beginners, where if you click on a piece that highlights all the squares, kind of want to subconsciously think about that at all times. And that sort of gives you an idea of how good your piece is by how many squares it can see. So if your knight's tucked away in a corner, then you can kind of map out that it doesn't have many squares. If that knight's in the center of the board that has a lot of squares. It's the same with the rook. Like the rook on an open file has visibility of the whole file, whereas the rook on F1 is blocked by it doesn't really have any scope. Yeah. So the more squares your piece can see, then the better it is, I guess, is another way to sort of think about it.
And while we've been talking, the arena has finished. So this game was aborted. Yeah, Crikey really needed to jump in and finish him off quicker, but he was playing quite conservative there. So Muggle-born Prince and Elite Jonathan 81 have tied for first place with 5 points. That's 2 wins each. And then Rich B with just 1 win has come in second place. So I really enjoyed this. Thanks, Craig. Yeah, I think we should keep doing this because I think there's loads and loads of value. You know, just from the discussions that we've had as well.
Yeah, definitely, it can be quite instructive for the viewers.
Yeah, I hope so. So yeah, guys, let us know in the comments what you think and whether you'd like to see more of this. Yeah, and also, you know, I'd be really interested in just, you know, sometime maybe you and I just jump on an open board and just discuss some ideas. And
100%, yeah.
Especially, you know, if you're going for the Gambit openings, let's just bash out some spicy opening ideas for people. That make a really good video as well. If you're up for that, Craig.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, we can chat about that offline. But yeah, absolutely.
Super stuff. Well done, everyone. Thanks everyone for taking part. I don't know. So it's finished now. The standings. How many players did we have? Quite a few.
27.
21.
27. I think it says up there, just next to standard on the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
27 total. And here it's got Wasp 1739 in first place apparently at this point. But
wow, so he get through. Am I reading that right? He get through 12 games in the allotted time. So he won. He got 8 points out of 12. It's quite a lot of games. So he must have had some quick decisive.
Yeah. 8 out of 12 though. So most wins, but Rich B got. I don't know. No, but earlier on it said 2 wins. So I don't know. I don't understand all this. But hot streak of 5 apparently there as well. So that makes much sense to me. But the point is that everyone's had a good time playing. And we've had a good time watching. So thanks everyone who took part. And Craig, thanks again, mate.
No problem, anytime.
Super stuff. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Cheers.